Ready?
Let's go.
Another Friday here from the downtown Rainier area.
Isn't this beautiful, beautiful night? Well, it's 77, 78 degrees and the wind's blowing. This is beautiful out here.
Yeah, great night, great evening. And I'm going to say this at the start of the show because as you people start to watch this, as Darcy gets it up and running and on YouTube and wherever else, man, is it hot out there. Woo! It's hot. It's hot. Because it's supposed to be warm this week coming up.
It's supposed to be warm.
Supposed to be warm. 90s Monday. Oof. That's too warm for Tim.
No, and I'll tell you what, I've got comments from friends on the South Coast, on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, even this afternoon, talking about this show, and I just says, guys, it's perfect here. We've even turned on the air conditioner once. You know, and it's but we can't really complain too much about the weather.
No, I was surprised to find out, George, that we're technically under the amount of rain that we're supposed to have had for 2020, and I'm kind of like, man, after the month we've had of June, where we've got some pretty big downpours. But I talked to somebody who went down to the St. Cloud area. They said in the yards, they said there are burnt, brown.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I guess some people have got it worse than we do.
Well, what can you say? You know, we seem to get all dried out, and then all of a sudden we get 3 or 4 inches of rain. That takes care of that, and off we go.
Off we go. Where should we start this week?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we just take a pass at professional sports. They seem to have an inkling of what's going on, although I don't know what inkling means.
I'll tell you what. You know, it looked early in the week when Major League Baseball said, yes, when Manfred said, we're going to play 60 games, I'm sick and tired of all this, we're never going to agree, we're just going to do what we're supposed to do, prorate the 1 out of 162 per game, the whole 9 yards, and we're finally going to just stop talking about it. And then I thought, okay, baseball's in, hockey's in, basketball's in, we're heading down a good road, and then everybody started to show up. They reported today 16 out of 302 NBA players tested positive for the virus, and you're going, well, that's not a whole lot, and I'm going, well, that's 1 out of every 20.
Yeah,
so basically 1 person per team has got the virus.
And on top of that, you know, the infection rate of this disease is such that, you know, a 20 can turn into 100 overnight. I've got one story in here, and I didn't want to, you know, we'll talk about it later, but it has to do pretty much the same thing. What about baseball now? Are they kind of putting everything on the brakes here too?
Well, to me, I think they're gonna try to go for it because
60 games.
They're gonna try to do the 60 games, and of course they're gonna play in their home stadium, so they're not gonna bubble it, but there's not gonna be any fans.
Yeah.
So here you got this. Well, what did I hear reported today? Florida had 9,432 new cases of the virus, and MLS and NBA, that's where they're heading to go.
Florida.
Yeah, they're heading to Florida, and you kind of go, okay, I understand they're going to be inside the bubble, but you know those guys, those young bucks, they're pretty invincible.
They certainly are.
And I was surprised as I was sitting down resting after a busy morning of golf with the boys and a bike ride with the little boy after he went golfing for 18 holes. I owed him a bike ride. Ooh. And they were telling me that they're shutting down the bars. No alcohol served in the bars in Florida and Texas. Those are 2 of the 3 most populous states, and they're shutting down the bars again because things are ramping back up, and you're just kind of going, this is a bad sign for the fall, George. Bad.
Well, here, as long as we're going there, we might as well just keep on going.
Sure.
College football and the coronavirus. Kansas State shut down all the football activities last Saturday. They invited everybody in. They checked it. It was 100% clean. They had a couple of more guys come in, and over the weekend they checked it, and all of a sudden there were 4. The next day there were 6. The next day there were 12. Boom! They put the kibosh on it. So right after that, Houston and Boise State went into succession right after that, and others that have closed have been Clemson, Texas, and LSU. Today, Morehouse University canceled their activities for the fall, and yet, Tim, most schools are developing plans to open up as well as playing football. The AD at Pitt said everybody realizes this plan is written in pencil. Well, I'm not seeing much of a plan, but I can see an awful lot of erasers being used, and still the amount of money and I was talking to a guy today, how much money is lost by Notre Dame? How much money is lost by Michigan? These 100,000 plus stadiums, it's incalculable the amount of money that's involved in this. So the motivation to keep these campuses open and the people on the field is immense.
Well, I saw something on, I think on Twitter or the news or something, ESPN, I don't know, today, and they were saying that for every Alabama football game, home football game, that's $25 million spent.
Yes. It generates
$25 million spent on one home game for Alabama.
And they're waiting in line to spend it. It's, you know, and so it's, well, here it's like 23 out of 130 football schools have tested positive for COVID-19. LSU had 30 cases after the team. They called the team in for, you know, their weightlifting and conditioning. Guess what? The boys all got together on Saturday night and went to a bar, and by Monday there were 30 of them that had cases. So, you know, and then what makes it even worse, some schools are trying to insulate themselves from liability, and so they're having the athletes sign a waiver. Now, Cory Booker, the United States Senator, got wind of this and looking in, and he says, call the waivers legally dubious and morally repugnant. And then he goes on, he says, they got exposed because you brought them back to campus. They were only in the bar because you told them to come back to campus. Otherwise, none of them would have been there. And so, you know, you get to that end, and I really wonder. I mean, this is football crazy, and you know, and so you just take a look and you just say, if that's what's going to go on south, but they're going to be shutting that stuff down.
Well, the Twins had several players, they won't say whether they're major league players or minor league players, that have tested positive over the last couple of days. The Dodgers had a bunch of players get tested positive, so there's been 7 major league teams, and they're planning on coming back and starting training camp, spring training here next week.
Next 1st of July.
And you're just kind of going, well, this may not be a good sign. Then the golfers, the PGA, they had 2 golfers that dropped out today because they found out
another one this week too.
That they had to drop out. Novak Djokovic, the #1 tennis player in the world, he held a little impromptu tournament here earlier. Then they went out to the bar in Serbia, I believe is where they were at, and enjoyed themselves. And now him and a bunch of his buddies and his coach all have the virus. The NHL, you know, a couple of weeks ago we talked about that the NHL, I thought was set, that they were in. They still don't have all the details hammered out on how they're going to test. Are they going to be completely isolated? Are they going to be able to see their families? Blah, blah, blah. They haven't finished doing that. They're supposed to report to training camp on July 10th. So I'm beginning to think this isn't going to work. The National Women's Soccer League, which has 9 professional teams, they're getting together in Utah to start playing tonight. One of their teams had to shut down because they had 10 players and or coaching staff or, you know, medical personnel or whatever come down with the virus, so they had to shut their team down.
That's the real crime on this. You got these great professional people, and they're getting sick at a much higher rate than what the average population is, and we need these folks.
Last Saturday night, I went to turn on Australian rules football. No Australian rules football because a couple of players on one of the teams had come down with the virus, so they canceled the game. And it's just like, they canceled. I'm just looking down at my notes here, folks. The NFL canceled the Hall of Fame induction ceremony and the game between the Cowboys and the Steelers until next year. It was a week of bad news overall.
I just got notice the Duluth Huskies will not have a season with the cancellation of the Northwoods League due to the pandemic.
Yeah, and they're one of the few teams. Everybody else is going to try to do something in these pods, but the Duluth Huskies decided to shut it down, which kind of surprised me because they've been getting together in these clusters to play these games, and I don't know. It's a little scary, and as long as we brought up the Northwoods, Wyatt Ulrich, his Bismarck Larks are 4-2. Mandan, one of the other teams playing out there, got a 4-3 record in the Bismarck Bull Moose, 2-5. And Ulrich, who hasn't played in the last week, he played the first 4 games, 4 hits in those 4 games, 5 walks, 4 stolen bases, a home run, 7 runs scored.
No, that's not bad.
That's not too shabby.
No.
And I got a little nervous when I didn't see him in the box score over the last couple of weeks, but they play tonight at 7:05 against Mandan, and so may have to turn on, at least see the box score to see if he's playing.
I thought I'd do that.
And hopefully things are going well. I don't know of an injury or anything that's going on, but
is that Northwoods League that they're
that
in
is
there?
part of the Northwoods League there that Wyatt is playing in.
Okay.
So, like I said, the teams in Wisconsin and Michigan got a pod, and Illinois got a pod of 5 or 6 teams that are going, and then St. Cloud, Mankato, Waterloo, and there are 2 other Minnesota and or Iowa towns that are getting a pod together, and they're going to start getting together, and they're going to start playing like right at the 4th of July or something. So these summer teams are starting to get in, and of course I haven't heard of anything falling apart, so to speak, where these Northwoods teams have come down with a lot of viruses, a lot of kids coming down with the virus. But then at the same time, unless there's symptoms, I would guess it's not like the NBA or these schools where they're bringing in and they're testing everybody on a regular basis. Maybe
No,
they are. I don't know.
it's a $100 test, you know, and on top of that, I got a report today that the tests have been so backlogged that there's about a week wait for them. And
Wow.
so, you know, and with sports, you know, when they take the test at night, you want to know the result in the morning, especially for NBA bubble and all the rest of these. I'm not sure that the bubble is actually, that must be a therapeutic type thing. I'm not sure how that works out in detail.
Well, it's a scary thing. I don't know. I thought with the MLB, with baseball announcing that they were going to come back and play a 60-game schedule, I thought, well, that's a pretty positive thing. I would say from this week, that was one of the few positive.
What a sprint! I mean, you could see that might be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, there's no, every game is going to count.
Every game is going to count.
You can't give any away.
No, that would be like a long extended playoff.
Yeah, basically every game is a playoff game. You can't afford to lose anything. Let's stay with baseball.
Sure.
Miguel Sano.
Oh, well, I heard he got into a little bit of problem, but they said no, that he didn't do what they said he did.
Well, you know, this is one of the...
I don't know what kidnapping is. I mean...
This is one of the things that happen, and I don't want to... Don't anybody get whatever, but you hear about a case or 2 per year about this in Central or South America, where, especially Venezuela, seems to always be, where some player gets kidnapped or whatever, and they get extorted for the money. Hey, we'll let you go play baseball. Well, it sounded like Miguel Sano got into maybe a discussion with somebody, and that's maybe putting it nicely, but him and a few buddies maybe had a talk with somebody, and so the person basically said, well, they kidnapped me, and Miguel says, no, they're trying to extort money from me. I think they wanted like 145,000 American dollars is what it came out to, that if Miguel would fork that over, they would drop the charges and whatever else. So it sounds like Miguel is a free man, and everything's going to work out for him.
Yeah.
And so
I would hate to have Miguel Sano mad at me. You see the size of that guy? You know, it's and he's really thick too.
he's pretty thick. Yeah, but he's got lots of money, George. So he's a viable candidate.
There are people that'll steal your dough all the time. There's no 2 ways about that. That's just.
So I hope Miguel makes it back to the States and is allowed to come back into the country when things get going, because he's a vital piece of the puzzle for that 60-game run that the Twins will be in. And hopefully things will go right.
Well, I did one thing today that you'll come to approve of, but I got a subscription to the Minneapolis Tribune, and the first story I read was about Miguel Sano, and I thought, why didn't I hear about this before? And then, but they were really positive that they were going to be able to.
Yeah, this happened mid-May.
Yeah,
I think this all got started early May, and they've been working through everything. The investigation was done, and it sounds like Miguel is going to be okay.
Yes.
So
he's a very good player.
You want to talk about Liverpool?
I got to tell you, Liverpool is a unique soccer team, and this is from the Premier League. Last night they won the first championship in 30 years, Tim.
That's pretty good.
And then this one guy said that set off the biggest celebration since Sergeant Pepper. The
Well,
champion.
I saw some flames when they were discussing this.
There were flames, and social distancing wasn't a factor. But then I come to find that Liverpool is owned by an American group, Fenway Sports Group. So Americans own the team, and LeBron James is one of their owners. And this part of it I didn't know. But they also had a young guy that scored the third or fourth goal last night and kind of put it over the top. And he's a young man from Boston, so we even have an American on the team. You know, and when you see this, you know, they've been trying to move soccer, football for a long time here. Maybe we're getting some ends. I know it's working pretty good with the women.
Yeah, I agree. The National Women's Soccer League that I was talking about earlier, they actually are going to have their first game. CBS is going to televise it live on Saturday, like at 11:30 or something, and then they're going to televise the championship game. So the women's soccer getting a little love. Of course, there's some stuff out there. CBS, all the networks are starving to put some sports on TV. But the thing about getting back to Liverpool, the scary part is there's still 7 games left in the regular season, and they clinched.
They only lost 2 games in the regular. They smashed.
What are they? 28-2-1 or 28-1-2 or something?
Whatever, some ridiculous thing. But yeah, like they said in the New York Times, they said Liverpool wins, no sweat. Yeah. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know, the English, they're enthusiastic about their football, and so and Liverpool, you know, my family's been there. I never have, but I know some other people that have come from there, and they're all a little bit on the edge. So,
you know, I'm into most sports, and soccer is one of those that I try to pay attention to, but I can't get into the Saturday morning soccer. I should get into the Premier League, and I know that there's some of the people that probably watch this show do a little Premier League. I just haven't bought into it fully. Maybe because the main reason is I don't know who I should be pulling for.
Well, yeah,
should I just pick a team and say they're my team? That's probably the way to do it, and then you would pay attention a little bit more. So, but. What else you got on
Well,
your...
you know, I tell you what, I saw a sporting event earlier this week, and that was the NASCAR down at Talladega, and this has to do with Bubba Wallace. And that's where
Bubba last week.
They found the noose, and then the entire cruise pushed him out in his car behind him, and then he got a hug. Like I say, I says, they pushed Bubba out at the start of the race. It was an amazing sight. The message was, all the good old boys of the South are not a bunch of bigots waving a flag. At least not the ones I saw that day. And the real true-to-life NASCAR king, Richard Petty, came out and held his driver's head.
Yeah.
Petty's my hero of the week. For him to stand up, and I mean, that's his culture, those are his people, and what Richard Petty is doing, in my mind, is the right thing. And for an 83, 84-year-old man to stand up there, big and brave. Of course, no, there was never any lack of guts in the guy. But
George, this whole story, there's only one thing I'm confused about. Okay.
Yeah.
And my confusion comes from the fact that they say that noose has been there since October of 2019.
Yeah.
They showed the picture of it in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
How did somebody not notice that? This is on Sunday that this gets noticed. The race was supposed to be on Sunday, got delayed to Monday. How did somebody not notice that thing when you were going in and out of that garage how many times during a weekend?
And that's the point.
How is this possible that it was sitting there for that long and then finally somebody decided to say something? And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. It just, something's not quite right there. That somebody should have said something on Friday. They had those cars there, I bet, on Friday at Talladega before.
They've been there for quite a while.
So something doesn't sit quite right with me. I don't like it. How it happened, where it happened, how it happened, it should never happen. It just isn't the right thing. But somehow something's not quite all right there. Why they didn't say something sooner's got me puzzled. That's the only thing that obviously it's a horrible thing. It was a horrible story, and it got lots and lots of headlines, and it deserved it. But it just, something makes me scratch my head about that one.
Well, it's a strange situation, and I tell you, Bubba Wallace was this NASCAR driver that really didn't want this kind of reputation or anything like that, but it was given to him, and he's handled it very, very well. And you know, and he gives you that, like he says, took my mask off so they could see my smile, and he takes off his mask. He's got an incredible smile. I can see why he has race fans.
Yeah, he's got charisma.
He does. It's all there. Absolutely. It's all there.
So, you want to talk about that defensive lineman from the Gophers decommitting that son of a gun?
Well, you told me about that. I was going to go to the offensive line. So,
well, there's a kid out of Texas, and you know he didn't really say why he decommitted this week, but he did, and he was a 3-star guy. And you don't want to start losing things, but I look at it. Was it a Minneapolis thing with what happened in Minneapolis over the last month? You know, this week the NHL took their number of hub cities from 10 down to 6, down to 5. Minneapolis and St. Paul were eliminated. Some people have theorized it's because of what happened in the last month, over the last month in Minneapolis, that was one of the reasons why Minneapolis was not chosen, because there's just it's a little bit too hot a place to be. I get that. So I'd hate to think that the Gophers may lose more kids because they're worried about coming to Minneapolis, and if that's the reason why, and like I said, he didn't have a good thing going here, lose a bunch of guys, a bunch of commitments because of what happened. But I would completely understand those young men or women who would think about coming to Minneapolis and say no, I'd rather go someplace else, so that I'm not in this hot zone, this hotbed of activity right now.
There was a young lady from, I'm pretty sure it was from Alabama, but she went to Robert E. Lee High School, and she was a 3-star athlete and a very good one. And she said, I'll not wear a Robert E. Lee uniform. And run for this name of this school again. So people are starting to piece these things together. I can't help but think that this is a watershed event, Tim, and like most watersheds events, they can be pretty dramatic, but they generally don't last long. And when you take a look at you know, some of the people that Minnesota has brought in to their program over the years, and I'm talking about in the 60s when black athletes weren't really brought into the program, and you know, I still think that Minnesota is a fair and school, and that they will take care of their athletes. They'll take care of their athletes better than any place else. Right now, you're right, they got a good thing going. They're ranked about number 4 in the Big Ten, and that's all kinds of schools, and they have an offensive squad that I don't remember, even with the loss of Johnson and some of the running backs last year, where they have all their returning linemen coming back. Connor Olson and Sam Schluter are the only seniors, and they're both red shirts. Daniel Falele, I don't know if they'll turn him over to the pros, but he's a junior, but he is 6'9" and 400 pounds, and that is an issue. Curtis Dunlap, who played not only guard, but he played center. He was all over the place in that line. Blaze Andrews, 3rd-team Big Ten. John Michael Schmitz, another one. Axel Rushmeyer, and I thought, Rushmeyer. I remember him. Why do I remember him? Well, he recovered a fumble in the Auburn game, and a big important one. And you know, and it's just like you start getting these things pieced together, and you think, you know, this is a whole lot better than Fleck had when he first came in.
Oh, no doubt about it. I agree. The talent, and you know, somebody said when they won over Auburn, well, you did it with how can Jerry Kill's players.
Yeah.
Those are all Jerry Kill's players that can you get the recruiting done? Well, it seems to me that he's done that I'm skeptical that we're going to get to find out how good a job that he did or how to keep this going, because it just, well, we're not going to get back to that, but I'm worried that they're not going to get a chance to play.
That's what I'm worried about too, and you know, and we take a look, and you and I talk about what's the good foundation of a good football team. Well, it is its offensive line, and when you have this caliber, you know, 4 of those guys were honorable mention Big Ten. The other one was third. I mean, a third team. These guys are good. They're big and they're strong. On top of that, I started taking a look at some of their wide receivers. We know about them. You know, there's 2 or 3 good wide receivers, and the tight end. I say that because I think the offensive coordinator they like going to tight ends in college these days.
Well, and we put about 3 tight ends on the field with these 5 linemen, so we really got 8 linemen on, and that's why we can run the ball so darn well, and I love it.
Oh, one guy is 6'4", 280 pounds. That's the tight end. It's not only tight, it's big. So, you know, I really am looking forward. I hope they can piece something together. Like the one lady said, colleges are so optimistic they're delusional. And I'm such a college football fan, and sometimes, you know, I even get mad at myself for being so obsessed with it. But I hope I'm not delusional.
Yeah, we can hope. All I can say is, George, on Sunday, Father's Day, I was flipping through the channels, and I came through the Big Ten Network, and they were showing the end of the Auburn-Minnesota football game from New Year's Day again.
Yeah.
And it was down to about 3 minutes left, and I'm like, all right, I can afford to watch this. And when Auburn threw the interception at the end of the game to seal the win, I even pumped my fist like it was happening live. I was just like, oh my gosh, you really are you really are missing something to cheer for, because I knew what was happening. I knew that was the play when things happen. Yet I was there. So
Sue yelled at me when that took place and said, "Are you all right?" She thought something broke or something fell down. But by that time, you know, what can I say? The Gophers just beat up Auburn, and I predicted that they would do it. I'm rarely wrong.
Rarely wrong. Couple of things I got on my list. NBA schedule is going to be released this evening, on Friday night. So by the time everybody gets to see this, everybody will know the schedule. The MLB is going to come out with their schedule next week, so it's good to be thinking about those things. Speaking of schedules, the Broncos summer baseball team was supposed to play their first game Thursday night at Virginia. They drove all the way down there. No team to play in Virginia.
Oh.
Virginia apparently didn't get the memo. The memo that they were supposed to be playing the game.
Guys, they don't read well.
So the Broncos, and I'll call them that, the Summer Broncos, are playing down at Greenway, down at Taconite tonight, down in Marble, for at 6 o'clock, and then they play at home on doubleheader on Tuesday, the 30th. So 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So if you want to get out, the weather is supposed to be fairly nice next week. A little bit too warm, isn't it? Hot outside, and
it's hot.
And we'll see what happens. But I think on the 30th, I think I will be over watching a little high school aged baseball. I think that's what I need to do.
Hey, I'd watch a little T-ball right now if it was good. So it's I don't need much motivation to go watch games.
No.
Yeah.
Yesterday was, and this is more of a historical fact, but Aldo DeMarchi would have been 94 years old yesterday.
Oh, my man.
And I'm sure you probably have an Aldo DeMarchi story that you probably could come up like that with off the top of your head. So why don't you let it rip? What tell us about Aldo DeMarchi?
I'm in the 8th grade, and I'm playing basketball.
Wait a minute, I'm doing the math in my head.
Yeah.
You were 13. So that's like 58 years ago.
It was a long time ago, and Aldo comes up to me and he says, "My 7th grade team is playing Fort Francis tomorrow. Will you referee the game?" And I was in 8th grade, but I was good size, and Aldo had to discuss life with me a couple of times the year before, but we seemed to have reached an agreement, and we became very, very close, and that was the year that Eldo and I became friends. So I refereed all his basketball games, and at the end of the game, he beat Fort Francis, and he says, "Oh, I wanted that one." I says, "You still have the old fever, huh?" "Yeah, I still got the old fever." But Eldo was as kind and gentle and as good a heart as you're ever going to find, and there's many men my age that love the man.
I've been doing this Bronco boys hockey scoring activity, and I've been reading, of course, the stories of the games and going through them, not word for word, but scanning them pretty closely. And Larry Ross in about 62 or 63 said, the reason why we're having such success right now is because of the rec program that Aldo DeMarchi has put into place, and we're starting to reap the rewards of his hard work and a bunch of his guys that were doing the coaching and that. So, you know, when I talk to the guys from that age, from that era, they are quick to talk about Heil Pike and Aldo DeMarchi and Bill Howard and what these guys did for them to get them over the top, to be the athletes that they were, to open the gyms, to have the rinks open, to whatever it was that those kids needed, getting them equipment, whatever they needed. So when we think about why Bronco sports is such a legendary thing, Aldo DeMarchi is a huge part of that.
Well, it was, you know, and you take Aldo at 17, he's a junior in high school, he gets drafted to go to World War II, winds up in Italy because, and Dick DeBennet and a bunch of other Italian Americans walked on, they could speak the language, and he wound up in Italy, and then he come back, and then went back to school, and wound up being an all-state end.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, and when you'd watch him play basketball, I mean, they'd have the basketball team would be Eldo and Bill and Russ Johnson and a half a dozen of these other teachers and teacher types. They were really good athletes. Yeah. All World War II vets. Russ Johnson sailed on the Missouri. Bill Howard was on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and Eldo went to Italy. But these were really fine men. And somebody said, you know, the greatest generation, and I was talking to a guy, and he says, yeah, they were the greatest generation, but they weren't the greatest generation until World War II started, and then that's when they realized they had to pull it up, and that gave them their opportunity.
Yeah. So, yeah, and of course, July 5th will be, as long as I'm talking about Hall of Famers and great Broncos, how about Frank Yuso?
Oh,
I believe going to have his, I think, 86th birthday on July 5th. Don't quote me. Don't quote me. If I do the math, he graduated in '54.
Yes, he did.
So that's 66 years. 84 years old.
84 years old.
Somewhere in there. And so, like I said, you want to talk about one of the most charismatic Broncos of all time. Frank Yuso fits that bill, and I wish him good health. I know things. He's struggling right now, but Frank, always thinking about him, and like I said, he's a true great in my mind.
Well, you know, how could you grow up in International Falls and not be a Bronco when you had people like that? You know, and not only him, Bronco, Joe. I mean, and all of the rest of them. These guys were really fine men, and they kind of set the pace. You know, a lot of people didn't go to college prior to the end of the 40s and the 50s. They did. And all of a sudden, here's, you know, now everybody goes to college. Why? Well, because going to college is good.
College is good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Hunter Shepard for a minute, if I might. Hunter Shepard, of course, the goaltender for the UMD Bulldogs for the past 4 seasons. And, of course, mainly the last 3 seasons where he got to play just about every game the Bulldogs played over the last 3 seasons. Obviously, 2 national championships. I think the hat says that all. And he got signed by the American Hockey League Hershey Bears this week, and it seems strange to me. There's some stats out there on him, and he played in 8 NCAA hockey games. Playoff hockey games, tournament games.
Yeah, that's good. That's a lot.
You know how many goals he gave up in 8 games?
Yeah.
8.
1 goal.
One goal per game in 8 tournament games when you're playing against the best of the best. and he doesn't get drafted. He doesn't get, how does a guy not get drafted? He didn't make the top 3 for the Richter Award for the best goaltender in college hockey. I get stunned. It seems like he wronged somebody in another lifetime. Because yes, sometimes it's the product of the system, but when you have goaltender numbers like that, his sophomore year he had 8 shutouts, 3 of them in a row.
And against very good teams.
And probably in the best conference, arguably the best conference in college hockey. And he just seems that a guy just can't seem to get any love. Whatever. It seems disappointing to me. But you know, sometimes there's these diamonds in the roughs. They've got to be in the rough for some reason.
Maybe he's changed his first name to Jacques.
Everybody would think that he was Canadian that way, French Canadian that way. Well, then he's got to be good. That's right.
He's got to be good.
So,
well,
anyway.
no, he has really performed, and his coach just loves him. And every time he talks, you know, what got me here, you know, was Hunter, and it was you know, and he did. I mean, you rarely saw UMD even in trouble because of their goalie, and you know. If you're going to have a really good goalie or an okay goalie, sometimes really good goalies save your life.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I just, like I said, to me, and I may be slightly biased being a big Bulldogs fan, but it seems to me that a guy with that gaudy of numbers would garnish some more love.
Oh, I'm going to tell you what, they're going to love him in Hershey. Hershey is kind of a crazy little hockey town place. That's where they make Hershey chocolate. I've been there. These are pretty amazing people. So, yeah, no, he'll do real well there.
Got anything else on your on your docket?
No, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. I've been spending the last couple of days looking at Gopher football possibilities because it's that time of year. But speaking of which, now you tell me, now the Broncos are going to start getting together on the 22nd of July, did you say?
Football is supposed to have their first practice Monday, July 20th.
20th.
Yes, and they'll have 4 practices that week. And then theoretically, if Bemidji State is still having their team camp, they'd go down to Bemidji for 3 days, and then they'd have 4 more practices because you can have 11 practices during the summer. So
that's really good.
I mean, to me, you're all listening to this going, didn't he just talk at the start of the show about all this bad stuff, and then these kids are going to get together and practice? And I'm like, that's what I'm saying, and I'm. Everybody knows how gung-ho, I've been trying to decide how I'm going to say this. Everybody knows how gung-ho I am about football and how much I love it and whatever else, but I've been on this show saying I don't think football is going to happen, and it's hard for me right now to believe that high school football is going to happen with everything that's gone on this past week. I told you last week I didn't think it was very good. I'm even more not believing that it's going to happen. So as a coach, I'm having a tough time saying, like, okay, let's go get them, because I think in about 3 weeks they're going to tell us no. And I think, and I talked to somebody who's very sports orientated today at the golf course, and he said, I think they're going to go all sports or no sports. And I said, I think they're going to go piecemeal. They're going to let the cross-country runners run. They're going to let the girls swim. They're going to let the girls play volleyball. And they're going to say no football. That's my prediction right now. I think I predicted that last week. I'm sticking with that prediction. I just don't think, unless they come up with some mess that a football player can wear that doesn't slide around and whatever else, that they can put on with a hook on, maybe hook onto their mask, something, their face mask somehow, some way. If they can find out some way, and I bet somebody's out there trying to figure it out.
Oh, you know that.
But I don't see it happening. I made you say last week, yes or no. I'm saying I just don't see it, and I'm getting very concerned that college football is not going to find a way to do it either because of what they went through, what you mentioned at the start of the show this week.
Yeah. I don't know as high school football can go their way while the colleges close up.
Yeah, if the colleges close, the high school football is going to, it's a trickle down. So if the NFL were to say no, college football would say no, I believe, and that would be a no to high school football it's a tough go.
Oh, it really is, and you know, kids, and seniors have been preparing for this for a long time.
Long time.
And you know, how do you say I'm sorry? It's just tough.
I want to say that my daughters came through, my kids came through for Father's Day.
Did they?
I got my turntable.
I thought you'd come over and look at my records.
First record I put on, Steve Miller from Fly Like an Eagle from 1970.
Steve Miller Band. Yeah,
75, whatever
album.
it is.
Classic
Put that
album.
baby on. Put the thing on. Went to put the needle on the record. Won't spin. And I'm like, I must have not put that. I must have not got the belt on there right. So I looked on there, got the belt on there right, hooked it on there, didn't have the speakers hooked up right. I'm like, somebody doesn't want me to hear this album. Finally, I got everything hooked up, and I started listening to it, and it was just like, that is so nice. That is so nice. There was a few hisses, a few pops, of course.
Yeah.
Everything else that you get with a vinyl record. So I've been listening. I had the Beatles on this week, and I've had a couple of other things on.
You're going to have so much fun with this thing. It's the cheapest amount of good time that I do.
Well, you know, from you, and I know whatever, this brings back memories from long, long ago. Everything that I probably listened to this week was from like 1977 or before. And so to me, it was like going back home and sitting in front of my mom's phonograph. And I remember just sitting there playing records and just listening, and there was something about that was good and wholesome, or whatever the right terminology is.
That's right.
And like I said, it was. I probably didn't sit down and listen to enough this week, but it was awesome gift from my daughters and the Eli and the son-in-laws, and so I say thank you to them. And I look forward to hopefully many years of listening to those records.
Oh no, I tell you, for years I'd get up on Saturday morning, take my half hour of news, and I'd go up and clean a couple of albums. And between 9 and 11 or 9 and 10:30, I just played. And pretty Sue would always say, you know, you're going to go play the music. Now she comes up and joins me. And I've got such a wide and varied collection that I have probably bought more albums in the last 5 years than I ever bought before, and they're all clean and they're all new. But I got an old Bachman Turner Overdrive greatest hits that I put on, and boy, I'll tell you what, Tim, it had your name written all over it.
Well, you know, and the scary part about this is, since Christmas, we've got an Alexa in the house. And of course, you know, with an Alexa in the house, you just turn and say, Alexa, play songs by Alabama or the Beatles. And so the other day I put on play songs by James Taylor. And Eli says to me, why didn't you say the Beatles, Dad? You should listen to the Beatles again, because you were... So the boy's got musical taste. I'm going to give him that. If he hasn't got anything else, he's got musical taste. He likes his rock and roll. And if he likes the Beatles, unlike his mother, then he'll stay in my very good graces.
I had my 7-year-old grandson singing Mean Woman Blues by Roy Orbison the other day, and Sue was in the kitchen just laughing. I got a woman. He was just laughing. He's looking at me. Mean Woman? Yeah, Mean Woman Blues. And he's just, maybe his grandfather's gone over the edge, but yeah, Roy Orbison's greatest hits is a dandy.
Oh, goodness gracious. So,
music and sports. You know, music, sports, and history. I got it all covered, although I finished one of my books. And
I was going to say, what about a book? We haven't talked about the book.
Well,
Grant is done?
No,
you did not finish reading
Grant. I did not
yet.
finish Grant, so that's still there. But I like to have an ongoing history book, that a page turner.
Okay.
And so I have a book that I haven't finished reading. It's called Marie Anne, and it's about a Métis woman in Canada coming across Lake Superior and going up and staying up on the North Dakota Manitoba border, and she was my great grandmother.
Wow!
And so this story was written by a couple of biographies about her, but that's one book. And then in fact, I have a Louis Riel T-shirt on. The other one that I have is a new copy of a different authored book by Louis, or about Louis, and I will be reading that real soon too.
Well, I actually paged through a book, and I have to say paged through it because you didn't really have to read a whole bunch, but you know, the Bulldogs hockey team, men's hockey team, when they won in 2018, you know, they got in by .0001. You know, they just edged out the Gophers to get into the tournament.
That's right. That's
and
fair.
so they had a book.
Yeah.
The Duluth News Tribune published a book about them. And so when they came out, they were like $25 a piece. So I ordered one for my Uncle Paul and one for myself. And it came with a nice wrapper around it. And I'm like, I'll get to you someday. Yeah, I'll get to you someday. Well, the Tuesday night was the night that I sat down and I paged through that book, and it only took me about an hour because there wasn't a lot to read in there, but they had a lot of pictures, and I got to relive the Bulldogs season and the great run and the winning at the XL Energy Center in 2018. So that was my book for the week, and it was just like I said, you get a chance during these times to do that, and I'm fortunate to be able to do
Well,
that.
and UMD hockey it has a long history with me. I knew Ralph Romano, and I mean, and we all knew Ralph. He was as easygoing a guy as you were ever going to find.
Sure.
And you know, and I'm not going to say that the hockey players were ever allowed to use his car, but when they did, they took really good care of it. So just these little details like that. Where'd you get the car? Ralph gave it to me. So this was quite a crew.
Scary stuff right there.
Yes.
Anything else?
I don't. When are we going to go again?
Well, you know, 4th of July is next Saturday.
Yes.
So are we going to try to do something before the 4th of July, or should we and do something after, or should we wish everybody a happy 4th now? Well, yeah, we might as well, because by the time they get to see our show, even if we
It's
taped
gonna
it
be
on
after
Friday,
Saturday.
it's going to be after the 4th of July.
Oh,
but,
so you take a week off?
well, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe we'll have to see. We'll see what
we can play it.
Well, the sports, you know, you just don't know if you're going to.
Do not.
You don't know if you're going to get a lot. Maybe by next week we'll know a whole heck of a lot more, and we'll have to have a show anyway. Stay tuned, people. Thanks everybody for watching.
See ya.